This program is brought to you by Allianz, your global partner for comprehensive insurance and asset management solutions.
Welcome to a new edition of Inside Grand Prix. Today you can see everything on the race at Imola in Italy. But first, let's get to know picturesque San Marino. The dwarf state, covering roughly 61 square kilometers, is regarded as the smallest republic in Europe and can be found in the northeast of the Italian mainland. Only about 4,500 inhabitants live in the capital city. And yet, it's filled with rich culture and the Italian love of life, the true dolce vita. I'm really looking forward to Italy. It's the first Grand Prix in Europe, of course, but I also speak the language, and I have a lot of Italian friends who might even be there, maybe some of them. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the culture, and I get on really well with the Italians. It'll be brilliant. Whether it's a passion for gambling or sport, San Marino is constantly in motion and offers a total of around 4 million tourists every year, an extremely entertaining visit. From athletics events to team and swimming competitions. Since 1986, there's even been a national San Marino football team, which played its first match against the Canadian Olympic team. Since 1980, Imola has been a regular event in the Grand Prix calendar, and San Marino is the patron city for the Mecca of motor racing, roughly 100 kilometers away. Imola, the curtain raiser of the season in Europe. It's usually incredibly cold, but still there's a real heat and a real battle there because of the emotions you always find in Italy. It's close to Ferrari, so there's always a brilliant atmosphere there. Even though things didn't go very well for the Reds overall last year, the Tifosi whipped their Michael Schumacher onto second place at Imola in 2005. So there's lots of experience in the oldest European republic, as San Marino claims to be, even away from the race, for instance, at cultural events and traditional festivals. Italians love to thrill their palate. Anyone who goes on a journey of discovery here, either in the bars and restaurants or simply wandering through the markets, is sure to find unforgettable culinary delights. My favorite dish is ravioli filled with ricotta and spinach and with cream sauce, prepared slightly red, and then with parmesan on top and a bit of ketchup and everything else, plus a little green salad. It's absolutely delicious. So, first of all, the Formula One work, then meeting friends and enjoying some delicious food. And anyone who wants to enjoy San Marino in a quiet and peaceful way has to wait until the late evening. By then, the flood of visitors will have flowed out of the city, and peace will have returned again to the winding lanes. Next, we'll look at the importance of the safety belt. But first, our preview, a virtual lap at Imola. The Autodromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari lies in the heart of the Emilia-Romagna, picturesquely situated in beautiful green countryside. Imola, a Formula One track full of contrasts.
The track does provide, again, a very, very different challenge. You need the car very good on the curbs. The track's quite narrow and it's got a lot of undulation, so a lot of climbing and downhill sections which give you a good sensation for speed.
The drivers race anti-clockwise on each 4.9 kilometer long lap. The Variante Tamburello chicane emphasizes the general character of the track. Slow chicanes and several full throttle sections. A constant stop and go and a real battle for the equipment.
It's very hard to get grip into the tires, so it's a big circuit for the tire manufacturers. From the chassis side, it's got very big curbs, so you have to set the suspension up really soft to hit the curbs hard. It's also a high downforce circuit.
Imola, a race that Alexander Wurz also likes to look back on. In 2005, the year the test driver had to replace the injured Montoya and won a place on the podium. A highlight for him, the Acqua Minerale. You get a really light feeling in your stomach, and the car becomes really light. It's offset slightly. You have to shift down immediately from 6th or 7th gear, depending on the gearbox, into 5th. And brake hard for a very short time, just 50 meters. Then you have the left corner, which gets more and more slippery towards the outside. You can't afford to get it wrong. The exit out of the second corner. You go brutally over the curbs and take lots of grip and speed with you. Even the slightest mistake is punished by the track and exploited by your rivals. With its enormously high wear on the brakes and the cars going flat out 60% of the time, this track always demands all or nothing. At the end of the lap in Imola comes the Variante Bassa, which is always a mental thing for the drivers. Because if you've managed everything right that far, then you think to yourself, okay, what do I do now? Do I play it safe, brake a bit earlier, lose a decent lap time? Or do I try to get everything out of it, brake a meter too late, and risk ruining the entire lap? So it's into the climax of the lap, a tight left-right combination from nearly 300 down hard to 90, then full power again to the start-finish. Pure Formula One action at the Autodromo Enzo Edino Ferrari. And now the current standings. Title holder Fernando Alonso already has a lead of 14 points. And Renault is also clearly dominating the Constructors' Championship. Next in Legends, Formula One 30 years ago. But now an Italian personality. Even in his 10th season, some critics call him an eternal prospect, a dubious reputation which Jarno Trulli would like to lay to rest once and for all. In 2005, he was always quick in qualifying, but only 7th in the World Championship. Too little for this perfectionist, but he goes on torturing himself, searching for the breakthrough.
As usual, during the winter time, I do quite a lot of training in order to be ready and prepared for the first part of the season and for the rest as well. And I'm quite fit and ready for the start of the season so far.
Born on the 13th of July 1974 in Francavilla near Pescara, Trulli loves his Italian roots, pasta, and of course, wine. In the world of Formula One, driven by the pressure of competition, Trulli is often a loner, but in private, he's very much a family man. In the past year, the first joys of fatherhood. His son Enzo was born.
I am very proud, actually, and I don't know why, but I feel extremely motivated now after my son is born, because I feel that after every race, I really need to bring a trophy back to him. So I really push very hard to do that.
Grape juice and its refinement, his other great passion, and a welcome distraction from the stress of motor racing. Here we're surrounded by wine barrels made of oak and various other different woods. We buy lots of them in France because French oak wood is particularly good and gives the wine a special taste. The wine comes from my home, the region of Abruzzo, with which I have very close ties. So this wine is very special for me. Whether it's in the wine cellar or on the tracks of the Formula One circus, Jarno Trulli wants to set the pace. The beating of the pistons in his ear and speed in his heart. (1997), his Formula One debut. After drawing attention to himself at Minardi and Prost, he joined Eddie Jordan's team in 1999. He was quicker than his teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Flavio Briatore brought this raw diamond to his team in 2001. All according to plan. 2004, an eventful year for Jarno Trulli. His first and so far only Grand Prix victory on the streets of Monaco. It made him almost speechless. A lot happened after I won my first Grand Prix. First of all, I lost my voice. What I achieved back then was certainly something special. I was quite surprised at just how much the Italian fans celebrated with me afterwards. That actually touched me more than the moment of victory itself, when I realized that I'd actually won the race. Then I flew to Paris to the Renault headquarters. I had various meetings with lots of different people and visited 2 big Renault factories. After an incredible reception, we all celebrated together. But he split from manager Flavio Briatore during that same season, and so his time at Renault was over. And it was not he, but his friend Fernando Alonso who became world champion the following year. Now, with Toyota, Jarno Trulli is driving for a team that also has the highest ambitions. But the pressure is therefore just as great. So the 31-year-old is not only driving against his teammate Ralf Schumacher, but also for his Formula One future. Because in Formula One, it's like with wine. Quality needs time. But in 2006, it really ought to be mature enough. Coming up in Safety Focus, it keeps its promise, the seatbelt. But first, a job of passion, Formula One mechanic.
We want to go competing, we want to go racing, we want to win, and we do it because we love it.
A job full of passion, Formula One for mechanics. Anyone who gets to work on a Formula One car has reached the mechanic's heaven, pure enthusiasm. Here, the 40-hour week doesn't come into it. Formula One mechanics not only work directly on the car, but also carry out all the jobs relating to the car.
And every single one of those person is used in the pit stop, whether it be from the role of the wheel gun job tends to be the number one mechanics, so there's a lot of importance on that. We've got mechanics and everybody on fueling, so everybody who's part of the team, you know, who works in the garage is part of the pit stop crew. So everyone is involved in that. And there's fierce competition for everyone to stay involved in that.
In principle, any car mechanic can do the job. You just have to be committed and stay on the narrow, stony path. For instance, via a touring car team or Formula 3000. And with a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck, you can take the jump into Formula One. But loners are not wanted here.
I think motorsport is a team sport, and Formula One is the premier world motorsport, and ultimately teamwork is critical. It's difficult at times because people are under high stress, and stress tends to splinter people, but ultimately we have a very strong team of people. We're improving not only the technology of the product, but I think our race performance, and that's coming through teamwork.
The Italian job is organized differently. Anyone who works on Schumacher's Ferrari has to have studied in Maranello first, at Ferrari's own Instituto. The engines from the previous season are available at the Institute. The trainee mechanics practice and learn with them. And they also fine-tune their inner attitudes here. They learn to live, breathe and absorb Ferrari. Anyone who does this job is passionate about it. It's not a question of money, because all the time you have to invest in this work is really priceless. Responsibility, know-how and passion, the ingredients for perfect teamwork. That's the A&O. After all, it's also a question of the image as well as points and earnings. Because the more points that are won, the higher the bonus for each individual mechanic. So it's always exciting, every time, at every new race. And one thing's clear, you simply have to love the job. Time for a short break, but we'll be right back with all the key facts on the San Marino Grand Prix. In Safety Focus, we test how important is the seatbelt for your own safety. Don't go away.
Allianz. insurance and asset management. Allianz, insurance and asset management.
Welcome back to Inside Grand Prix. Coming up, news and facts. But first, in safety focus, please buckle up. The driver and chassis is one. Hard labor in the cockpit. Tough braking points, G-forces, downforce. The driver must never lose control here. Everything under control and firmly in his seat. That's the job of the safety belt. Logically enough, buckling up is compulsory in Formula One for many reasons, but it's actually not so easy to do as with a 3-point safety belt in a passenger car. Because a Formula car has a 6-point belt, it must be buckled by mechanics. In other words, the driver climbs in and lets them buckle him up. You can't do it yourself because there's so little space in the cockpit. The anatomically shaped seats provide as much comfort as possible and allow as much freedom of movement as necessary for the work in the car. The arms, legs and head get enough freedom, in contrast to the upper body. The Formula One drivers are held down in their seat buckets like a pilot in a fighter jet. Safety belts, a strong restraint for the tough ride over the Grand Prix circuits.
They need to be very comfortable, of course, over the course of a race, because the races are long, and obviously when they get a bit sweaty, I suppose, and also they can stretch a little bit, so because of the forces on the belts and the braking and acceleration and cornering, sometimes the belts can move just a little bit in terms of only the shoulder straps, but not the other belts. It's important that in all types of crashes, head-on, side, and also rearwards, that the belts are trying to do the best job, of course, to keep the driver located in the seat as best as possible.
In an emergency, the driver must be able to release the 6-point or harness belt with a single hand action and to leave the cockpit within 5 seconds. That's also true in normal road traffic. Belt up, the first safety commandment. That also includes pleasant traveling and comfortable sitting. In contrast to motor racing, the passenger wants to enjoy much more freedom of movement. It should be possible to make movements of this kind. For many car drivers, however, reaching for the safety belt can still not be taken for granted. A bad decision with serious consequences. We held a test on the track. We wanted to find out what effects this negligent behavior can have. The test dummy is thrown out of the seat at a speed of just 30 kilometers per hour. Unbraked and unprotected, it crashes through the 2-centimeter thick wooden plate. Driving without a seatbelt represents a life-threatening risk. The safety belt's just one component, but the most important component of the restraint system that's installed in passenger cars nowadays. There are also other components, like the seatbelt tensioner, which makes sure the belt is held really tight in an accident, and the belt force limiter, which makes sure the belt can be loosened again in a controlled way. If the force becomes too strong, and bone fractures would be likely. And of course the airbag, which is triggered when the safety belt would exert such a strong force that it needs to be supported even further. Now the same test with a safety belt. The system takes action. At present, researchers are working on individual detection mechanisms which adjust the seatbelt tensioner and belt force limiter to the size and weight of the passengers. Safety and driver protection always take priority. Now, in Legends, the Formula One season 76. The Italian moments in the Formula One season 1976 were primarily defined by the Scuderia Ferrari. The reigning world champions in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships stepped up for the mission, title defense, with a proven team. The number one in the team was still the Austrian Niki Lauda. At that time, he was regarded as the best driver in Formula One. He was strong in qualifying, intelligent in race strategy, extremely ambitious, and well-versed in the setup and enhancement of his Ferrari 312 T2. As in 1975, his team colleague was the Swiss driver Clay Regazzoni. Experienced and cool in his mastery of the car, he was not as ruthlessly ambitious as the much younger Lauda, and was given the task of collecting as many points as possible for the Constructors' Championship. The Ferrari 312 T2 in the 1976 season was a further development of its tried and tested predecessor. The 12-cylinder flat engine produced 470 horsepower, and so about 30 more than the more commonly used Ford Cosworth 8-cylinder engines. The Scuderia Ferrari made a breathtaking start to the season. Niki Lauda and Clay Regazzoni won 6 of the first 9 races of the year. The total of 13 podium finishes was a sign of the dominance of the Italians. But all was to change on August 1st, 1976. The dream of a certain title defense was transformed into a nightmare at the Nürburgring. In an inferno of flames at the Green Hell, Niki Lauda fortunately had all of his guardian angels on board. But his world title dreams seemed to be over. However, 6 weeks later, Niki Lauda was again fighting for the crown of world champion. You can hear the Austrian's memories of that horror crash, how it came about, and who helped to rescue him in the next edition of Inside Grand Prix. And now for our news and facts. He wants to come back and compete again in Formula One. David Richards. His team is called ProDrive. It's currently competing in the World Rally Championship, comes from England, and is on the waiting list for joining Formula One in 2008. Although Richards is the favorite to win the final place, rumors about possible B teams from the major manufacturers, for instance Super Aguri, could still throw a spanner in the works for ProDrive. The FIA will announce on April 28th whether the ex-team boss at BAR Honda will be able to compete or not. Formula One is going on an eco trip. Anyone wanting to compete in Formula One in 2008 will now have to worry about fruits and vegetables. The fuel suppliers have now agreed to introduce biofuel. It doesn't really deserve that name. At least 5.75% biomass has to be blended into the fuel. And this environmental initiative is going a step further. Max Mosley's clear vision of introducing a hybrid engine has received a positive response. Honda's team boss, Nick Prix, said on the subject that Formula One was always intended for developing and testing technologies that could then be used in passenger cars. Ferrari wants to attack again in Imola with a new suspension so that the tyres reach the right temperature better. Totally new wings and an improved engine. So far, the Ferrari team has not been able to get above 19,000 RPM because there were still problems with the pistons in the engine. For this reason, the reliability can't be guaranteed 100%, so the team have had to reduce the speeds. Ferrari supplier Mahler is currently working at top speed on a new development. The brake facts for Imola: the hardest braking point on the circuit is just before Rivazza. The drivers brake down from a top speed of 305 kilometers an hour, which makes it difficult to control the car at the limits. They have to handle the brake pedal sensitively in just 2.1 seconds, because otherwise the car can start to skid. Meanwhile, forces of 4G act on the body. That was Inside Grand Prix. We'll be back for the next race, the European Grand Prix.
This program was brought to you by Allianz, your global partner for comprehensive insurance and asset management solutions.